All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the EGL podcast. I am your host, Mr. Clutch. I am joined by Tex and our guest that we will have every single week. This week, it is Matt Pizza, the GOAT. Love my man, Matt Pizza. But how's it going, guys? How was your day so far?
Man, my day was something, but I'm really excited to be here. Talk some exciting EGL action, and get to get my face out here a little bit. Well, I guess my name's not less my face.
Matt Pizza, how about you?
Just a chill day, waking up at a solid 2 p.m., you know, doing some work, helping the fam out. And then I'm here on the EGL Whirlpool episode 1. Glad to be the first guest you guys got.
Yeah. So let's get into some backstory before we, get into the state of the league, everything. So, Tex, we'll start with you since kind of everyone knows who I am, so it's not really needed
Oh,
for you
okay,
to
okay,
dive
that's
into
cool.
that much. But let's
Everyone
start
knows
with
who I
you.
am.
Oh yeah, you're newer here. You're kind of first week on the job, so give some backstory about yourself. Let them know what's up.
Of course. Hi guys, my name's Tex. I am one of the co-owners of Revolution Esports. We are in EDL and EGL. We have a silver team and a gold team. I was not a founder of Revolution, but I am co-owner with The Doc 1992, as many of you have probably met and seen and played against over the last year or so. Um, let's see, what else is interesting about me? I'm a boomer, not really, but I'm up there. I've been playing League for like 8 years, and I'm hot garbage. Uh, I started in IBS with ZGG, back with some names you might know: Aardvarks, Unknown Angel, and General Denobi. And my favorite champion is the one and only Pantheon. And you don't get a better support than that. Just saying.
What about Galio? I know you like your Galio.
Oh, I will always so Galio, Pantheon, and Blitzcrank. Those are near and dear to my heart. But the last like 6 months or so, I have been grinding some Pantheon, going right back down to bronze.
Oh no, back down to bronze. Oh no, that's not good, Tex. All right, well, we'll move on to Matt Pizza. So Matt Pizza, you are our guest
Mhm.
on the show this week. So obviously, people kind of know you, but just give us a little bit of your backstory, kind of where you came from, yada yada yada, all that good
Uh,
stuff.
All right. So, I've just been, vibing in the comp scene. I was kind of dragged into it by this guy, VBU Clutch. Uh, if you guys don't know, me and him go to the same. Actually, all three of us somewhat used to go to the same university.
Somewhat.
Uh, somewhat.
Somewhat.
Text a little like earlier
I
than
graduated like 4 years ago. It wasn't that long ago,
yeah.
right?
Boomer.
Yeah. But yeah, Clutch and I were in class, and he was like, "You want to play for my team?" And I'm like, "Sure, I have nothing better to do." And then like 2 years later, here I'm stuck in the VBU jail, and like with no hopes of getting out. Um, but yeah, I do play
VBU
top lane.
jail.
And I guess my favorite
Okay.
champion in the top lane has to be Fiora, as you can see by my Project Fiora icon that Clutch ever so graciously put in.
Yeah.
Um,
What about Orn? Do you like Orn?
no, I actually hate him. I despise him, and every time someone puts me on Orn duty, I uh just kind of want to run it down, but you can't
Really?
because it's Orn, and like
You
it's
want to
just
hear my hot take
impossible.
on that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's hear the hot take.
Only cowards think you can't carry on tanks, all right? Just
Oh no,
saying.
I'm not saying I can't carry it, but like if you put me on Orn, I just want to
Oh,
run it
fair.
down.
It's Ornn in particular. I was
It's
extrapolating. I was thinking
yeah.
that was all tanks,
No,
but
no, no, no,
okay,
no.
okay.
If I'm playing Scion, that's completely different from
Oh,
me. Let me run it down
oh,
and carry.
that was my OG support, Scion support back in the day. My
Oh,
boy,
the
my
Scions,
boy.
the Baus. If he was watching our,
Oh
if
yeah.
he was watching any of your gameplay, he'd be very proud.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
Oh my god.
Not to go over. I want to give you a little secret strat here before we move on to the next phase. Scion Leona bot lane, glorious, absolutely
Dude,
Oh,
insane. Throw a carry in the jungle and it's over.
it's just doomed. Dude,
I
I remember when Ornn first came out. You had the
mhm.
Scion bot lane. Oh my god, that was fun.
Yeah. Well, at VBU we had our own style back in the day in ZGG Gold when it was like me and Sharp Otter and all those boys, and we would run Tarek Maokai bot lane, and they other team didn't know how to beat it, and it would just get permabanned every single game, and it was the funniest thing in the world because like you would just lock Vayne or something, and the game's over. Um, but we don't talk about that. We can move on here. We can actually
Yeah,
get
rein us in,
into
Clutch.
obviously what we're here for, which is the state of the league. We're going straight into team discussion, and we're going to be starting with Hyperion Origin. We're going to go top to bottom based on the standings. Now, keep a note: Hawthorne and VBU haven't really played. They haven't played their match. That is going to be Thursday. So just keep that in mind. We're going to start with Hyperion Origin. Who wants to start us off here? Tex, you want to start us off?
Oh, with Hyperion Origin?
Yeah,
Yeah,
start us
man.
off.
These are so this is one of the two teams that you were giving me some crap for my ratings, but I consider these Hyperion Origin to be one of the pace setters of EGL right now. Just from the way they play the game across all five roles rather. Sorry, I forget top is a role sometimes. Um, they're the pace setters, right? They're the way they play the game. They're very they've shown a great amount of coordination. They have a lot of skill across all the positions. I would say one of the things that I'm really interested in seeing is the back half of their split, right? So far in the first three matches, they've had a relatively, comparatively easy schedule going against VBU, Abyssal, and Monkeys Rising. Now, I'm not knocking on those teams, but relative to the skill across, the skill disparity here is relatively easy, especially with some of the teams they have upcoming. Uh, I think they're going to probably finish top two. I think it's them and Hawthorne unless anything changes. And I think in comparison to that other team, they have the greatest they have the highest one of the highest ceilings in the league in terms of growth and potential going into playoffs.
Okay. I mean, I agree. Matt Pizza, let's get your take before I start asking some questions. What do you think about Hyperion Origin? Like, how do you think this team plays? What do you just see? Because you've seen them a bit.
Hmm.
So I just want to get your take on Hyperion Origin.
So, like, I'd say like before week one, right? I
Mhm.
had no idea who any of these players were. I've heard about Dracana and I've heard about Attila before, but like I've never seen them play. So I was going into this blind, and in week one, it just blew by my mind what the solo laners for Hyperion Origin were able to accomplish, right? Um, I don't know if you want to bring the numbers out or if you want me to bring the numbers out,
You can
but
bring out the numbers. You can
I
do
can
it.
bring out oh
Sure.
Give
yes,
us
let
the
me bring out the
stats.
numbers,
Let's
the
Yeah,
go.
bring out the
stats.
stats.
All
Let's
right.
go. Back up your
So
points.
the rune mage, right?
Mhm,
This guy is an Aurelia beast, right? So
mhm.
obviously with Aurelia comes the ability to just getting insane CS leads, but this guy is averaging about 8.15 CS per minute across all the games that he's played. So that is an insane amount of CS. That is topping like almost all the other players in EGL right now. So with that comes a huge CS diff at 10, right? He's got a CS diff at around 14.8 and an XP diff of about 190. So this guy's gaining the levels, getting the gold, and he's outputting a decent amount of damage with it as well. He's outputting about 622 damage. Now, the other solo lane, right? Mid lane, Dracana. This guy is nothing to joke at as well. This guy's coming in at around 10 KDA, right? He has a CS of about 6 minutes. He's not CSing as well as the Ruin Mage for obvious reasons. He's not on Aurelia duty, but this guy, he's putting out the damage as well. He's doing at around 800 damage per minute. So these two soloists for Hyperion Origin, they're the players to watch. They're the players that will decide whether Hyperion gets the dub or if they're gonna fall to some other team.
And obviously, I'm going to say two things. To ask two questions before we move on to the next team. I agree with basically everything you said. I think it's the solo lane story for Hyperion. Even on the stream match, we saw Dracana kind of pop off in the mid lane and carry his team in game number 2 against Monkeys Rising. But the two questions I want to ask. Question number one for both of you guys: is this the best solo laners in the league? Do you think Dracana and the Rune Mage are the best top and mid in the league? We'll start with Matt Pizza this time.
Hmm. As so, are we gonna talk about the rosters like right now? Like we have some roster changes, and am I allowed to like?
It's based off of the so not you can talk about the roster changes later, but like just right now. Because like
Right
I know
now?
the roster
Okay.
changes could change it, but they
Hmm.
haven't played a game.
Okay.
So you don't
All
really
right.
know.
In that case, I do think that they are the best solo laners out of all of EGL.
Okay, so you would say they're number one in their position. Like
Mhm.
there's
Mhm.
okay. Tex, what about you?
Oh man. Okay, so I'm putting my bias aside here. No, Dracana, I think like almost by stats alone, this guy's doing some heavy lifting, and I think I would agree. I am hesitant to put my name, stamp it, rubber seal of approval, 100% right now. That yeah, they're number one each role, but minimum like top two, right? Especially Dracana, minimum top
Mm,
two. The Rune Mage, I want to see them go against. Like this goes back to I think their strength of schedule has been relatively weak, and I haven't gotten to see them against some of these other tops and mids. So
yep.
I'm like a soft yes. That's why I'll shorten my answer to a soft
Okay.
yes. But I really want to see like some matchups against Vixper, some matchups against. I want to see some more mid lane matchups, especially. But like I want to see some more stuff going on here.
Mhm.
Okay. And then the next thing, I guess, it's not really a question, but it's something that like I guess it's like my kind of hot take. For our parent, I think their jungler is pretty underrated. Uh, he obviously with his solo laners, like if you have strong solo laners, it makes the game a lot easier. But I think their jungler is actually pretty good. Now I know on the stat stock it has two different names. That's the same person, by the way. But they just name change, so it's a little bit different. But I think he still puts up pretty solid numbers. I mean, KP he's around like I'd say like 60%. If you put them together, they have great objective control, which is something that I don't think we pointed out. Their first dragon percentage is 80%. Their first baron percentage is 80%. Rift Herald percentage is 80%. Like they are really good at getting these objectives, and I think it starts with their junglers. So it's just one thing I wanted to point out that I think their jungler is a little bit underrated and doesn't get a lot of credit that I think where credit should be due. I
I
don't
wanna
know if you guys have any take on this,
I want to
but
jump on
you can
that
go ahead,
actually.
Tex.
So one of my observations, especially from the game against Monkeys Rising, is their mid game, right? And that translates
Mhm.
to they have a really strong mid game, and they're really effective at taking leads or even moderate, like just staying even. They translate these things from laning phase into an effective collaborative effort in the mid game, winning team fights, taking these objectives, and I think that all really hinges around that jungler. Uh, Playing to the objectives, playing to his solo lanes, and helping his team convert their individual skill sets into a collective win. So big shout outs there.
Yep. Matt Pizza, you got anything
Mhm.
before we move on to the next team?
I mean, just to like piggyback off of that, like you guys didn't talk about the first tower percentage as well. This team is getting like 80% of the first turrets, so it
80%
just
everything.
80% of everything. They're just looking for the stats at this point. Um, but yeah, like it just shows that they have a strong early game. They're able, like I guess it does stem from the jungle, right? Like Hades Crown or looking for Zuko's honor. Like he's just dictating how the early game is being played, and with such a fast early game and fast and strong early game, it's a they're a good team.
All right. Well, that's all we've got for Hyperion Origin. We're going to be moving on to the next team in the standings. It is Revolution Esports. Now, I know Tex, you're kind of co-owner of Rev, so you probably have a lot of things to say about Revolution. So we'll get to you last
Oh,
because
that's fair.
you're
That's
going to have you'll have the whole spiel. I guess I'll go first. So for Revolution Esports, right? Top three team, right? I think they're very good. They have a lot of good pieces. I think that Revolution has very good mid jungle synergy. I think Kurt and Zygon, who are their jungle mid, um, I think they play around each other very well, and I think Revolution plays around their solo laners especially well. We'll get to Vixper a little bit later, um, but I think Rev is a very solid team, and I think with the later this split goes, I think we'll really start to see them grow into this like top two team. Actually, I think they could contest Hawthorne, even though they did lose them earlier on. I think with time, this team will become better. Also, um, one thing that I've noticed that I think it's obviously going to change, and I talk with Tex a little bit about this, is that to me, and this is just to me, this isn't really like anyone else shares this opinion. This is just only it seems that this team doesn't really have like a set play style yet. They're still kind of figuring that out. They just like to like whatever the other team's play style is, they just match it, and sometimes they just do it better. So that's just kind of what I see from Rev. Um, Matt Pizza, I want to give it to you before I kind of get ask the questions after Tex goes. So I'm
Mhm.
gonna give it to you. What do you think about Rev? Where they're at, where they're going, stuff like that.
Like yeah, I totally see what you mean by their like ability to like take the enemy team's playstyle and just adapt it to their own, and well, not adapt, like just copy it. They're just a copycat in a sense. All right, not to flame Mutex, but come on, man. Like we need a playstyle out of them. But I do think we've seen their jungler, right? BDN Zygon. He did play in EDL season 1, and he was a really good jungle. He does tend to play the carry junglers, so I mean, yeah, like the rest of the team, like Shopper 6, right? He's a really good support. We've seen him around in the gold plat scene. He did play in BOL plat last season for my team, for the ISU JV team or academy team. My bad. But
Don't slander our name.
but this team, they see, like from what I see on stats alone and what I've seen in game, right? This team likes to play around their jungle, which is something. It's a unique play style on its own. The jungler has around 70% KP, so this team like makes jungle plays. So
Mhm.
the success of this team just kind of depends on BD and Zygon in a sense, right? And Sharp Butter, right? Like we see that these two have the highest KP on their team, so these two are probably just roaming and doing jungle support shenanigans. But
All
yeah,
right.
Oh,
the
okay.
yeah.
Is
All
that all you
right.
got, Matt Pizza?
hmm
Okay, Tex.
You ready for
I
me?
know this is
Okay.
your team, so go
I,
ahead.
I will I will
Let's
try
hear
to
it.
be as objective and clear minded about this as possible, but I love my boys. So Revolutions. This is the I think one of the best iteration of the Revolution squad that we've had. And that's talk myself up a little bit here. I benched myself. Just saying. No, I'm kidding. Sharp from Sharp Otter to Vixper, from Vixper to Sharp Otter. This team has a lot of talent. The strong suits, I think you guys have already touched on it, right? It's Zygon and Unknown Angel. That synergy is really kind of the rock around which the team can pivot. Aardvarks is a fantastic utilitarian carry player, so he'll take Ashe, he'll take Varus, he'll take
Mhm.
a lot of these champions that help set up and facilitate team fights. Not only do they just do damage, but they have this utility. Sharp Otter is a fantastic shot caller, uh, and him paired with Zygon help control and dictate the pace of the game. Communication is super super key for winning a game of League of Legends, and these guys are on top of it. I want to give shout outs to my boy Vixper. Talking about communication, this is the guy. I was thinking about this the other day. He's an instigator, but in a good way. This guy's gonna just pull the trigger. Like he will say, we need to pull the trigger. This is gonna happen, and he top gaps so that he can help pull that trigger. This guy is a beast in the top lane. I'm really excited to see where he goes, especially matched up into stuff excuse me, into uh, into these top lanes as we grow across the season. Um, from a playstyle perspective, I do think you guys are accurate in that the team is still learning how to play together. Uh, right now, what I'm seeing is they are very opportunistic. So they do play around the
Mhm.
jungle, and they play to capitalize on mistakes. You'll see a lot of solo kills from Vixper and Unknown Angel that get translated into pressure and towers, a lot of towers, and generally speaking, trying to contest dragons and stack those. I think the weakness there is we won't be. The weakness of that more opportunistic kind of capitalizing on the other team's mistakes is you're not as often like pushing the initiative, right? I think they're
Mhm.
still learning that. I think Potter has a really happy trigger finger. He likes to make plays, especially early game, and it's just figuring out how can the team support that and execute on that effectively. Plus side is that opportunistic style or capitalizing on mistakes allows them to go toe to toe with some of the best teams out there. So, and when I say opportunistic, I'm thinking more the early to mid game. So late game, you've got folks like Sharp Otter and Vixper who will just pull the trigger. Unknown Angel will try to go and solo kill someone, right? They'll do the crazy stuff, but early game it's a lot more opportunistic. So it's got its ups and downs. That's all I got. I don't want to go too much further into it. I want to give the other teams some time to hear themselves get talked about.
Okay, and two things I just want to talk about before we move on to the next team. Um, Kurt, top three mids in the league? Simple yes or no. Don't even need to explain.
Yes.
I'm saying yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Next one. We can go a little bit more in depth. So BDN Zygon did come from EDL. And one question I do want to ask is that has BDN Zygon's play in Gold Lead, has it been successful or has it been kind of lackluster or like I guess a failure? from your guys' perspective? Obviously, Tex, I know you're gonna say success because he's your jungler. Okay, so I already know what you think. Matt Pizza, I'm going to you first. So I want to hear your point of view. Has he played well enough to where you see him moving up as a success for Revolution Esports?
Uh, See, that's a difficult question to answer because I think it all just depends on the day. Because I've seen BN Zygon absolutely smurf it, right? I've seen him do well, get the lead, and get his team the dub. But I've also seen him like mess up the lead. Like he gets the lead still, but he just doesn't play towards it. He doesn't play to like close out the game in a sense with his lead. So although I think overall he is growing as a player and he is like succeeding, I think he still has a lot more room to develop before I can like fully say that it's a success. Like
Okay.
Tex put it, I'm gonna say a soft yes.
Okay. Tex, we'll go to you, and then I'll give you my take, and then we'll move on.
All right, I'll try to keep it concise. I think it's been a success, and if anything, it's been a success from seeing him both in scrims and in games play a wider variety of champions and playstyles. So when he first joined, he was very much the Kane main, the Nocturne guy,
Yep.
and was looking to carry through the jungle. And he has been so incredibly open to learning and like expanding his skill sets and trying to be at that top level of competition that I would say so far 100% success in terms of growth, and I would love to see him. I think you're right talking about learning to close out the games, and that's not on the jungler alone, right? That's working with your
Yeah.
team and learning that big picture. How do you take the pieces of a team, and both from a mental player perspective and from an in-game champion perspective? How do you put all these things together to close out a game? Because that's one of the things that the team struggles with. If you look at our history, 40-minute games is an average. So 100% success. I'm all in. Zygon's my boy.
All right. Yeah, I agree. I think Zygon, so far at least to me, I think he's been pretty successful. Now, obviously, he has had some games where it's like he kind of just runs it down, and you're kind of just like, okay, what's going on here? What happened? But then there's other games where he just 1v9s. So I'd say so far he's been successful, especially for a silver coming into a gold league. Sometimes it's very hard to find your footing, and I think he's definitely played well enough uh, to warrant his spot for jungle on the team. But that's gonna be enough for Revolution Esports. We need to move on. We are going to the team that I think
Oh
is the
boy.
most exciting to watch. I think everyone likes watching this team. It's gonna be Hawk Thorn Esports. We don't really need much of an introduction because everyone knows this is the aggressive, like LPL team that will fight you over anything. Tex, take it away from me.
Dude, look at like the average stats for this team are just kind of crazy, right? They are brawling, they are fighting, and like they're from the stats I can see, average kills and average deaths are equivalent, but this team powers through, right? They are taking initiative early and often, and I want to jump. I want to be the first one to say counters. This is insane. 70% kill participation across 5 games that we have of stats here, at least with in the ADC role. You never see that. You absolutely
Yeah.
never see that. There is just so much chaos happening through these games, and they control it. I gotta give another shout out to Matty Mice at his Thresh. If I remember correctly, I think it's his
Yes.
Thresh
It's fresh.
encounters just whatever, right? Give that guy whatever, and they coordinate so effectively. They make these challenging dives and unique dives that it blew me away. And that's just talking about one piece. The rest of the map is phenomenal. I'm a big fan of what they do, and they're one of the teams that I'm really excited to see how they grow and evolve their strategy. They come in with a bang. Are they going to keep that heat going through the rest of the season and into playoffs?
Yeah. So I'll go here. I think Hawkthorn is insane. And their ADC, I'll just say it right now. I don't think anyone's going to contest me on this when I say that. I think they have the best ADC in the league. I think counters is just like, you know how we were talking about mid, how like there's Dracana and Rune Mage, and maybe there's people that contest them at like best mid or top in the league. I think counters is just there's no one even close. Like I think this guy's absolutely insane. We've seen his Kaisa. And I don't know how it's not permabanned every single game because the second this guy lands a plasma stack, if he's level 6, he's going in. He seriously does not care. And we've seen it multiple times where this guy will just killer instinct into 5 people and somehow get out alive and even kill someone. This guy's a beast. Hawthorne Esports, they're your aggressive team. They take it to you. They don't care if they're down 10K. I mean, we saw against Rev on the stream. They were down, what, like 6K? They won one fight and the game was over. Like, this team just flips on a dime. They are so insane. Um, but I know one thing we did talk about, Tex, you and I, that I want to touch on a little bit before we get to Matt Pizza. Does their play style scale well? Like, how is this going to look later on into the season? Because right now, it's looking really good. You're able to just take it to these teams that don't really know how to deal with aggression. But, Tex, you did say that later on into the season, when we get into like week 6, week 7, and teams start to figure out their aggressive play style, is this going to still be the same Hawthorne esports that we've seen the first couple of weeks, Tex?
I am very curious. And it may even I think I've seen it before. I think this playstyle can last you through the regular season, right? It can last you through best of threes. You may start getting contested, right? I've seen it a lot in IBS where you have teams that come in and they're just hot, they're playing like crazy, and they're just being super aggressive, uh, and smashing players that have no idea what's going on, right? You have no idea
Mhm.
what's hitting you. You don't know how to react. You get panicky, and that can take you really far in the regular season, set you up for success. But as soon as you start to get to those best of fives, longer series against teams that have practiced and grown and evolved their playstyle, especially when they're losing games, there's something that's really important in competitive League of Legends about losing games. That experience is
Yes.
so invaluable. And if you win all your games with one strategy and one strategy only, by the time you get to where, you've got to like truly test yourself, you don't have that breadth of experience that other teams might have. So that's I agree with you, Clutch. That's one of the things I'm really excited to see, and really
Yep.
interested to see what happens when they get to the playoff level.
Okay. Matt Pizza, you got anything to add about
Oh,
Hawthorne?
oh yeah, of
All right.
course.
Go ahead.
All right. So we've talked about. I'm just going back on the counter strain, I guess. There's one little easy beachy stat that you guys didn't talk about that speaks like that just says it all, basically. All right. So we have the XP diff at 10. Now, counters, NADC. You don't expect him to have an insane
Oh, yeah.
XP diff.
This is
He has
insane.
536. So the question arises, how does he get an XP diff that much? Well, you see, he's just him and his jungle, they're just diving on repeat, forcing the ADC to just play gray screen simulator. And the ADC, the other ADC, they can't play the game. I mean, how are you gonna play the game when you have ARF in your jungle, or ARF in your lane? You have Matty Mice landing the hooks. How do you get to play the game, right? Like
Mhm.
we see that Hawkturn, I mean, like they're putting all their chips into counters, and obviously, like it's working out really well.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
I
And
think that's it for me. Yeah.
one more thing I want to point out that it's just kind of my hot take on Hawthorne. I think their soul laners aren't that good. And maybe this is just me, but I think they're like average at best. Like, I look at the stats here and I see them with like 40% KP. They don't really have like any insane numbers. I guess obviously they have a new mid. They don't have who they had, which was like Hard Stuck Brother or something was like their old mid, and now they have a new one that I think is a little bit weaker. Not saying that they're terrible. I think they're like average. But I think if you're gonna beat Hawthorne, I think you abuse their solo laners because I think their solo laners are their weak points on the team. I don't think you're ever winning bot lane against counters and Matty Mice. I think they're just way too good. Um, and you give Arth Shyvana and the game's just over. Like that guy will literally just 1v9 the game. Who the counters can AFK and they'll probably win. Um, so just wanted to touch on that. That
Speak.
personally, I think their soul laners are a little bit weaker. If anyone has anything they want to say on that, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I got one
Um,
last thought I want to throw in there. Um,
go ahead.
and this may come up a little bit later when we start talking about teams lower down in the standings, but there is something to be said about not having a team that is fully stacked with like high tempo instigating players, right? There's something to be said about having some players who will get in there and do their job and be that foundation, be the pillars that you need for your Arth and your counters and your Matty Mice to pivot around
Mhm.
and to lean on.
Yeah,
Now,
I agree.
how much they get exploited, if there is something to exploit there, is yet to be seen. But I do agree that that may be a weak point and maybe the crux that you have to like, or the needle you have to pick at, or whatever the idiom it would be. Words are hard, but yeah, you get the idea, right? That may be the thing to pressure, but I don't want to understate the value of having the 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 guys who get out there and do the paperwork, right? You got
Yep.
your hero cops and you got the guys who do the paperwork.
Yep. Matt Pizza, you got anything to say before we move on?
Yeah. So I'm not gonna go too in depth
Yep.
about this, but we talked about Hyperion Origin, how they have the best solo laners, and obviously, like my match to watch is gonna be Week Seven's Hyperion Origin versus Hawkturn, right? We have the like almost the best solo laners in EGL going up against the best bot lane in EGL. So I mean, we'll talk more about this when we get to it later on,
Okay.
but I just wanted to drop that in here right now.
Yep. All right. Well, we're gonna move on to the next team in the standings. That is Flippa United. Now, before we even start, I just want to say I really have nothing on this team. Like I can't find anything, so I don't really have much to say. Like all I have is like they're an above average team. They don't really have a set play style that I can figure out. Their E sub spheric is cracked though. That guy's insane when he subs in, and
Absolutely.
now he's on the roster. And the only really thing I can get off this team is that they seem to be a bot centric team playing around Riv and Spheric in the bot lane, and they also have. I got to get the stat up here really quick because I think they have like so the first Drake percentage is like 60%. So like they play around their bot lane. Um that's really all I've got though. I don't really have much more. Maybe Tex or Matt Pizza. You guys have more to add on this.
Matt Pizza,
You
I'd
guys
love
can
to
take
hear
it
your
away.
thoughts, man.
Yeah,
All right.
Matt Pizza. Let's see what you got first.
Honestly, like Flipper United, they like again, I have almost no idea who any of these players are, right? I know the players I can name off are Remzi. I've seen him and played against him in a plat in I think ZG plat back when I played against him. But honestly, I don't know. But look at these stats alone. Like it seems like their support spheric, right? And I'm not entirely sure if this XP diff is correct or not, but it says he has an XP diff of 900 at 10 minutes. So take that with a grain of salt. I'm not entirely sure if that's right, but I'll focus on the KP. He has a 74% KP, right? For a support, like that's
Pretty good.
really high. That means like either their bot lane is just fighting 24/7, getting the leads, or like he's a roaming support, right? He roams, gets his team a lead. So
Mhm.
this team seems to be playing around their support. The support seems to be their strongest player.
Yeah, and
Um, yeah,
keep in mind that's their E sub. That's not even their starting support, which is Remzi. So it's like, who's going to play, right? Is it going to be Remzi? We saw Spheric play last week against VBU. They took a game. Remzi came in. They lost the series. Not saying Remzi's bad, but that's just what happened. This
hmm
week, Spheric comes in 2-0 the series. Apparently, it was Flipper United just smashed them. So it's like, all right, what are they going to go with? Like, what's the play here? Is Spheric the new starting support? Is it still Remzi? Like, a lot of questions to be answered. Tex, go ahead with
Yeah.
what you got.
So Burger Flip as an organization has a penchant for grabbing some really talented players, putting them on a roster together, and coming in like with grand expectations. And I think there's a significant frequency that those rosters do not succeed early in their seasons.
Mhm.
That pattern I can't say holds throughout the entirety of their seasons. It's a newer organization, right? But at least from the pattern I'm seeing so far is their early seasons are really rough, and they usually have a compilation of really talented players. Uh, I know we've talked about Rimsey a little bit so far. I've gotten to work with Rimsey. He got to help coach one of our gold teams for a little while in the earlier this year. He's a really smart player. Got a good
Mhm.
brain for the game. He was formerly in the jungle, and I had the pleasure of playing these guys week one, and by no means was like it was against Adishon and Rimsey, and those
Yep.
guys are strong. Like I think Adishon was a very competent, like top tier ADC, and I think Riv is clearly up there as well. So they have tools, right? They have tools. It's just how do we put this stuff together? Is
Yep.
it playing more together? Is it figuring out a play style? Is it consistency? They've got high KP, so they play as a team, but their games tend to have like low kill scores. uh, they have reasonably competitive objective takes. I just want to know what like and I'll need to go back and check out some stats on the most recent win, but what is it about Spheric and Riv that's introduced to this team? Like, what's the difference? What did they do that clicked, right? They've got on
Mhm.
paper, it looks like they're a good team that should go at least 50-50 at minimum, right?
Mhm.
So what's going on? What do they have to do to change, or what did they do that led them to get in that 2-0 this past week?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't know. Like, I just know they won the 2-0 at the E sub. But yeah, I think Flipper United can be a top team in the league. Um, but like you said, beginning of the season usually is a little rough, and it's can they stick it out? Because a lot of the times their teams end up kind of disbanding after a couple of weeks because it doesn't start out so good. And then towards the end of the season, they're slamming these top teams and making it into the playoffs. It seems to be something that happens every single time. BFE, one of their teams is in the league, so will they be able to stick around? I think Flipper United should be a playoff team. I think they have a very good roster and easily should be in playoffs. Anyone got anything else before we move on to the next team?
I do have one last thing I want to call out.
Okay, go ahead.
Uh, their next 3 weeks are against Monkeys Rising. Let's see, Monkeys Rising, Hyperion, and Hawkthorn, and they end the season against BDE. So they're
Okay,
0-3 against the easiest part of
they're
their
one
season.
two.
Or they're 1-2. Thank you. Sorry.
Yep.
I said BDE. We'll get to them. That's what they're 1-2 in coming out of the easiest part of their season. And going into the next 3 weeks is going to be huge. Both if they can grab a win against either Hyperion or Hawkthorn, that's going to be really potent in two directions, right?
Yeah.
It's going to set up Flippa for a good seeding into playoffs if they can get that, and entirely disrupt the top of the ladder if they get a win against one of those teams. They got a
Yep.
they got a tough road ahead of them, but I'm really excited to see what they do.
All right. Well, that's Flipper United. Next up, moving on, we have Abyssal Sapphire. And now I know some of us have some, I think, different takes on this team. I have my own personal take. Who wants to start it up? You know what, Matt
You know,
Pizza,
yeah.
you started up. You started up. Let's hear
I'll
your
start
take
it.
on Abyssal.
You know, I'm hopping onto the James Moriarty hype train. All right, this guy, when he was mid lane, he absolutely smurfed it. Right, like we talked about this in the EGL pregame show, but I'm gonna reiterate it again for the people who don't watch it. This guy is absolutely insane. His quirky is legendary. Like that is one scary quirky to play against. And he was put on ADC. They do have a new mid, going 24. So I believe they lost their last game,
They
last
did. They
series.
played Flippa, I believe, and they lost
Yeah, they
2-0.
played football. So I'm gonna scratch it up to growing pains, right? They did do a huge roster change. They had a new mid. So obviously, I think if they're able to get this play style down right, and if they're able to play around James Moriarty, I think we could see this team like take the third or fourth spot. I think they are a solid team, and if they play around their bot side, I think they can definitely make playoffs.
Okay. Tex, you want to go or you want me to go? Who's,
I want to go. I'm gonna
all
be a
right.
little
All
selfish
right.
here. So
Go
this
ahead.
is
Let's
a
hear it.
team that is in this muddy space for me. I don't have a great grasp on what their deal is. To me, they're similar to Flippa. They're a little similar to Monkeys Rising, in that they've had some high points and some really low points, right? And I don't think the road. I was just talking about with Flippa how their strength, like they got a really tough schedule to finish out the season. I think Abyssal's in a similar boat, right? They went against BDE, Hyperion. Sorry, did I say Abyssal? Let me make again. Words are hard. I apologize, guys. Uh, Abyssal has a tough road ahead of them. They've gone against BDE, Hyperion, and Flippa. That means they've got some of the toughest and one of the toughest teams in Hawkthorn, and they still got Revolution, they still got VBU, right? They still got Monkeys Rising in their future. None of those teams are anything to sneeze at, right? And at the same time, these are all teams that they're going to be competing with for playoff spots. So
Yep.
they have to, and they're 1-2, getting the win against BDE, and then losing to Flippa, losing to Hyperion. That's not, in my opinion, setting up a very confident. Like that's not instilling a lot of confidence in me for their setup going into later in the season. I really want to see something, some more action from Darkstar. I know we were talking a little bit, and I want to hear what we have to say about how he plays the jungle. But just looking at some stats, he's got high KP, he's got low XP diff, he's got some moderate KDs. He seems like he's a more supportive type jungler. But does he have the lanes to back up that supportive playstyle? Clutch, what do you think?
Yeah. So this team for me, it's very hard because I think week one they looked good, but you could tell that like this wasn't going to be a top tier team. Like after you saw them play BDE, you knew like it was a 2-1 win, but it wasn't a convincing win. Now you said Dark Star, does he have the laners to play around? Well, Dark Abyssal Sapphire did just add the Fire of the Fox to their top lane, who is plat 4 and has almost a 60% win rate. Not
All
saying
right,
he's going to be an amazing top laner. However, when you go from Dead Shark to him, I think it's a significant upgrade. Um, they have Golem in the mid lane, who is a solid mid laner, and James Moriarty obviously is now the ADC. Um, but to me, it's like I think this change was made a little bit too late. Because like you said, Abyssal is now going to be going against teams that they basically have to win against. They're going against teams that are there in the standings, and tiebreakers are going to be like head to head is important. Especially when you only play one series against the team, you have to beat the teams you're really close to. And just looking at some stats here, Abyssal has an average game time of 37 minutes, which is really, really long.
yeah,
37
that
minutes
is
is
a marathon.
very long. Um, which I don't know if that just comes from them not knowing how to close out a game, or if that comes from like them being able to hold on long enough. Um, okay. Um, okay.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm looking at their stats, right? So they're
go ahead.
getting, sorry, not to interrupt you, but
You're
just
good.
they're getting a decent amount. They're not getting a lot of dragons per game. They are getting some barons per game, right? They have a 50-50 on the first baron, first dragon. I feel like what it is likely that they're really their strength might be that they're good at not losing quickly. If that makes any sense, right? Like
Yeah.
they take objectives frequently, but not enough to win to stack stats
Yeah.
and close out games inherently. So they probably put themselves in situations where they're having to scrap for value, scrap for gold, scrap for resources from the map, and they just kind of bleed out slowly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And um, I think they're a solid team. They're like an okay team. I think they can squeak into playoffs. If they can put pieces of the puzzle together. Because to me, like, I don't think there's much of a difference between like fifth through eighth. I think, or like sixth through eighth. I think they're all same skill level. It's just who's just gonna squeak in. And remember, top 6 out of 8 make playoffs. 5 and 6 go to the losers bracket. Um, it's double Elam bracket. So yeah, I mean, Abyssal, they're gonna have to try to sneak in. I think James Moriarty, to me, and this is a very hot take, I think he's a top 5 player in the league. I think this guy's absolutely insane. He's extremely good, but it's like one player can only do so much, right? You can have the best player, you can have Faker on a team, but if the rest of his team isn't very good, Faker can only carry so much, right? Like you can't just there's the term 1v9. Yes, you can 1v9 some games, but against a better team, they'll just neutralize you and it's kind of doomed. I'm not saying that Abyssal is bad, but it's really the James Moriarty show, and it's how much can this guy carry and can the team enable him. Matt Pizza, did you have anything to say? We move on here because I heard that you might
Um,
have something.
I mean, yeah, just quickly going back to the whole entire them bleeding out. Like they don't take that many turrets, right? The turret first tower percentage is 16%, right?
It's pretty low.
Like so they're turning to play the slow game, right?
Yep.
It's like the turrets in the hair, right? You have Hawkthorn just running towards the finish line, and then you have taking nice and slow, waiting for them to make the mistake and capitalizing on it.
Yep.
Just chilling, relaxing, and not LPLing.
They're the LCK. Uh,
Yeah.
All right. Well, we need to move on. Abyssal Sapphire, like we said, I think they can sneak into playoffs, but they just definitely need to show something in these next upcoming weeks. Us to definitely be like, okay, this is a playoff team. Next up, Monkeys Rising. Now, for me, Monkeys Rising have been kind of a surprise to me. because they technically are all almost like IBS players, so it's an IBS team in the Gold League. Um, they play a slower pace game. They aren't that team that is going to take it to you. I mean, we see their average game times 29 minutes, so they're not as slow as Abyssal. They're not the super slow team, but they're not the very fast pace like we're gonna just slam you. They have decent stats, I'd say. One thing I do want to point out is that their first dragon percentage is 16%. So they don't go for Drakes. They seem to play towards the Herald. They are a top side. We want the Herald over Drake team. Is one of the notes that I wrote down. And yeah, it's all about from me for me. Herald, get our laners ahead. They seem that they can snowball a game very well. And close out a game. Uh, but sometimes because they are an IBS team, they kind of just get skill gapped and unfortunately, they just can't really come back. I think that Monkeys Rising to me is 100% underrated. I think that this team has shown even like a couple days ago, they went against Hyperion and almost beat them in game 2. Like they were right there with Hyperion. Unfortunately, they couldn't close out the game, but they still showed promise. Like they aren't just going to roll over and die. And in game 2, they showed against Hyperion, which was the number 2 team or number 1, depending where you rank them in the league. So I think Monkeys Rising is a solid team. I think they have a lot of potential, but I think against some of these top tier teams, they kind of just get skill checked and lose. Tex, go
All
ahead.
right,
I
I
want
need
to
you
hear
to
your.
remind me real quick.
Go ahead.
That game too, was that the Senna Cho'Gath bot lane game too?
Yes, it was.
Okay,
It was.
so that's where like I have a hard time with this team because I'm impressed. I'm a fan. Like I want to see them do good things. I want to see IBS
Yep.
players like step up to gold and have success. Right, the clutch story. Um, I want to see that happen. Right. I want to see it. And I was talking about we were watching this game together, Clutch, and I was telling
We
you
were.
like they are gonna get through this laning phase on the back of I don't want to say cheese because they were playing it seriously, but the back of a non-traditional style of play. And the moment that Hyperion hit that mid game, this is what I was talking about with Hyperion, right? They have that mid game team fight coordination, turning
Mhm.
even lanes into advantages for themselves. If they're not behind, they're already set up for success. We talk about Monkeys Rising having a slower paced game. If I'm playing a slower paced game that's meant to set myself up for mid to late game success, I want to see more than half a Baron per game, right?
Mhm.
I want to see more than like 2 dragons per game, right? You need to be like turning, like execute on the strategy. That's really what I want to see. Basting the second, that guy, watching his Urgot, man, he's great, right? Chinese Spy is
Yeah.
a known entity. Bird Nurse is another known entity, right? All these guys have like great talent, and for silver players, it's how do you turn that talent into consistent like how do you turn it into a consistent strategy? I want to see them be
Mhm.
able to take a traditional comp, get it through the mid game, close out a game using the objectives and using the map to their favor. That's really what I want to see.
Yep. Matt Pizza, you got anything?
And yeah, like
Okay.
just to go off, like we've seen Chinese Spy and Burners in the EDL scene. Like those two, like they got some unspoken synergy between those two,
Oh yeah.
and like they're really good to watch, right? Like it's really like amazing to see people who have had success in IBS also have that same type of success in EGL. Now, I think the road against them, um, it's a tough road, right? Like they have teams like uh Hawkturn, they have teams like Hyperion Origin that they need to overcome, but I think overall, as a team, they're a really solid team and a really good showing for what IBS players should strive for, right? To like get to gold and also have success. And I'm just gonna do a quick shout out to our boy Zell, our production crew. That guy, his blitzcrank needs to be permabanned. Like, have you seen it? Those hooks, they just connect.
Yeah. I'm
Definitely
gonna,
this is one of my teams that's like in that middle pack in the hunt
yep.
for a playoff spot and I think they have
I agree.
a really significant chance at making it deep into playoffs.
Yep, I agree. All right, well, we're gonna move on to the next team, which is VBU Krypton. 1-1, haven't played. They play Hawthorne Esports on Thursday. Matt Pizza, you want to give us the rundown before I start flaming my own team?
You know, I'm not gonna give you the rundown, but I'm just gonna take the flame instead. All right, we're gonna look at our top lane. Our boy Akbalo in the top lane. Oh my god, this guy's probably the worst top in the league. Like, just get him out of
Okay, I'm
here.
not
Like,
saying that.
no, no, no. But for real, um, I think overall this team did have some growing issues, right? Like the week one Krypton was arguably really weak. They were like probably one of the weaker teams coming into EGL. But then with the roster swap coming in, with Kaiden coming into the mid lane, and Toxin and Islamic just like honing in and how they want to play the game. Like I think Krypton is it's like you said, it's a middle of the pack team, right? Like they do have Kaiden. He's a really strong gold mid laner. He's having a lot of success in BOL right now. I believe he's going on for semifinals. So we know that Kaiden is a strong player. He's coming in from VBU Oregon, the sister team. So overall, Krypton is a strong team. They do like to play around the top and mid. They like to get Aklo ahead and Kaiden ahead. And if those two players do manage to get ahead, get a lead, they'll just 2v8 the game, right? And
Mhm.
in all honesty, it's up to All Fair 26 for them to get the lead, right? Like they need the jungle presence in their lane to get the lead. And I mean, Toxin, Islamic, Samurai, and the bots, they're just from a weak side, unfortunately. And they've just been doing a good job at it as well. Like, it's not to say they've just been like, oh yeah, no, they're just running it down. They're not, no. Like, they're doing their job, right? Like Tex said, you have the people making the plays, and then you just need the people to just like back them up. And for Krypton, it's their bot lane. Their bot lane's just there, like, filling out the paperwork while you
Yeah.
just have everyone else just going out and doing things.
Mhm. Tex, go ahead.
Yeah,
Let's hear your take.
I don't have a lot to say about this team. I do want to talk about Toxin and Islamic Samurai a little bit, and just express that I think they are one of the keystones on this team, even though they do play weak side. Uh, like I think this team has a lot of potential, a lot of pieces to go the distance, and having that strong core bot lane, uh, in a tournament where there's a lot of solo lane talent, having a foundation in the bot lane that can just give you that rock, that carry and that carry from the ADC and the utility from the support is going to be super valuable going late in the season. So that's my thought. I apologize. I don't have a whole lot to say about them right now, but I'm going to
Okay.
keep my eye on them.
All right. So I'll do myself, then we'll move on. So VBU Krypton, it didn't really talk about like the team stats. They're actually a very fast paced team. They actually have faster game time than Hawthorne, not by much, but it is faster. Um, so Krypton is a very fast paced team. They'll run over a game. They get a lead, they'll run over a game. But they get behind, they will lose the game instantly. They are like the double-edged sword where if you are ahead at 10, this team will steamroll you. If you are behind at 10, this team's gonna run it down. It's very interesting to me that it's like that. They seem to not really know how to come back into a game. They kind of are just like bleed out and die. They kind of just take fights over and over and then just keep getting more behind. One thing I do want to point out, I think Chitin, obviously with the roster change, him coming in, I think he's the top 3 mid in the league. I think he is very good. Akbalo, double-edged sword. He's either going 10-0 or 0-10. I think that if Akbalo does get ahead, like you said, I think he can carry a game. But if he gets behind, he'll probably be the reason why you lose. Not even trying to flame. Like he is the double-edged sword. He is like the shy. He will literally go aggressive no matter what. Even if the jungler's topside, he's getting 5-man. He's still trying for the 1v1. Which is a double-edged sword. It's the shy play style. And last thing, want to point out, this team has really low objective. They have like only 1.6 dragons per game. They average half a baron per game. They get like half a rift per game. Their first dragon percentage is 20%. Their first baron percentage is 20%. Their first herald percentage is only 40%. So that's a little concerning to me that their objective control is very, very low. Now, I can't really pinpoint a reason, but yeah, their objective control is pretty low. I think VBU Krypton, I think when they're on, they're a top 30 team in the league, honestly. When they're off, though, they they don't look very good. So obviously need to work that out. They're going against Hawthorne Thursday. That'll be a banger match. Make sure to pay attention to that. We're going to be moving on, though. We got our last team that we're going to be talking about, Big Duck Entourage Gold. I've got a lot of things to say about this team, but I don't know if the stream wants to hear me talk again. So I'm going to send it over to Tex, and I'm going to let you talk before I
Oh
uh,
man.
start flaming a little bit. So you can go
So
first.
I had some ratings for each of the teams, and there's three ratings. There's pace setter, gatekeeper, in the hunt. Well, those are the three, and then there's a special one for BD, and it was fucked. Uh, I say that more for humor than anything. I look at these stats of this team. They have pieces, right? I don't think an 0-3 start is insurmountable. I think there will be enough volatility in like the center pack of the bracket for them to step up. Uh, and when I look at their roster or at their schedule, let me pull that up real quick just to make sure. Uh, Abyssal Sapphire, Monkeys Rising, and where'd that last one go? Revolution. They've been going against the teams that they need to be competing with to get that lower berth in the playoffs. They've gone 0-3, but they have the potential to upset teams like Hyperion, like Hawkthorne, right? They can play spoiler, and getting a win there and getting like just 2 wins to close out the season can go a long way to
Yep.
disrupting the middle of the pack and the top of the pack. They've got the pieces. Like we look at these stats that these guys have. It's a team that has what is it, right? Let me. Oh no, I can't read. Big Duck Entourage. There we go. Okay. Their kill participation across the board is insane, right? They have
Yep.
like decent objective control for a team that's 0-3. They have solid to exceptional laning stats for a team that's 0-3. Like I look at it on paper, and it's a team that's full of good players that have a playstyle that have the ability to like I think the potential to synergize. It's just where are the wins coming from or not coming from? How do we get there?
Mhm.
Mhm. And like, I agree with what you said, Tex. Like, they have a lot of pieces, and like, I'm looking at the stats sheet. Like, they have a lot of different players that played for them right now. They
Yeah.
had almost 9 other people on their roster. So like, the roster, it's really volatile. But I want to talk about their incoming player right now, right? We got Altazi coming in to replace Psych in the top lane. Now, do you guys think that with the addition of Altazi and with like the best pieces, do you think BDE has a chance to make it to playoffs and potentially like win it all?
Whew.
With this raw, okay, so I'll give you my hot take on BDE. All right, and if anyone from BDE is watching, I swear to God, I don't mean this in a negative way. Um, I just think they're fucked. I'm not even trying to be super rude because I think there are some very good players on the team, right? I think they have pieces that can help, like it can be big for their team. The only problem is like you look at their schedule, right? Let's look at their schedule. So they played Abyssal, lost. Monkeys Rising, lost. Rev, lost, right? Who are they fighting for to get into the playoffs? Monkeys Rising and Abyssal, and they lost to both them. So now they don't have the tiebreaker against. And I guess you could say, oh well, Flippa United. They still gotta play Flippa United. Well, I'm looking at their schedule. They got Krypton, Hawkthorne, Hyperion, and Flippa United, which are all really good teams. And like, I just think they're absolutely kind of screwed. I seriously don't see a way how they're going to make it. Now, with their new additions, with Altazi coming in, maybe it's possible. 1 second. um, I think Altazi is a very good player, but starting 0-3 is never good, and especially in a league where you don't play a lot of games, a lot of series. Um, it's really difficult for them because now they got to play catch up, and it's against teams that are at the topper echelon of the league, besides Flippa United, right? So you already don't have the head to head. You're 0-3 start. Um, you you're in games, right? Like they're in the games, but they just never are able to win them. They can keep it close, but they can't like come back or close it out or anything. So for me, I just think Big Duck Entourage kind of a little bit screwed, and they're gonna need a miracle to make playoffs. Um, so that's just my take on
What's
this
the
team.
name of the player that's coming in? Can you repeat it for me?
Altazi,
Altazi.
Altazi. Hmm.
he's on VBU Argon as
So
their top laner.
so is this their God Gilius? Is this the Schalke 04? If I could use a dated meme, is this the team that's going to make the miracle run?
I'm gonna be honest. If I think there's any team to do it, I think it could be BDE, just because of the firepower they have. But I think it's very unlikely, just because of how deep they are in the hole.
I think this is
Hmm.
the team that has the potential for one of the most interesting and intense storylines.
One hundred
Uh,
percent.
Not that they're the only team that has an exciting. I think almost every team has an exciting narrative behind them right now. I think BDE just has the most extreme narrative, right? It's
Yep.
all or nothing. And at this point,
one Hundred
go
percent.
for it. Stay consistent. Use the tools that you got, right? In ZGG, when we did Silver Scraps, I don't want to necessarily talk too much about other tournaments, but when we did Silver Scraps in this last season for IBS, one of the things that Colonel, who we all know from MIT, one of the things that he talked about from the beginning of the season to the end is the impact that frequent roster changes have.
Yep.
You need to just build consistent teams, keep those teams together, and let them practice. Even if there's weaker points, even if there's people that are struggling in a certain way, you got to do your best to make use of what you have, right?
Hmm.
Obviously, don't keep an asshole around who just ends games and runs it down on Orin, right? But like that was a dig
I.
at someone here.
Mm.
Yeah.
But you get the point, right? Like to a degree, roster consistency is really important. And if they can hold on to a roster that clicks, get the scrims in, get that practice in, and make that miracle run, I'm all here. I'm here for it.
100%. Anything else before we start to get to the end of the show? No.
Mm,
I'm
We're
no.
good to
excited.
go.
I think there have been some banger matches, and I'm excited to see where the season goes.
Okay. So we've got two more topics that are going to be very short. Um, we just quick glances. You don't really have to explain it. First off, any surprises or letdowns? I mean, obviously there's going to be some. Tex, I'll let you go first, then Matt Pizza, then me. Be just surprised, letdown, very short description,
Sure.
and then we move on to our next part. So Tex, go first.
Letdown. I think, and this is not to be mean. I had big hopes for Flippa, and I still have big hopes, but I'm a little disappointed with where they have started out their season. But I'm glad that they got that W and are on the point of turning the game around or turning the season
Yep.
around. Surprise! I'm here for Monkeys Rising.
Yep.
I know
That's
they're 1 and
my
2.
point.
I know they're 1 and 2, but being a silver team coming up into gold and being as competitive as they are, taking a game off Hawthorne, not giving up on games and trying out new strategies. I know I kind of flamed the non-traditional stuff, but I still think it's big balls to try that stuff out in competitive on the stream. So that's what I
Mhm.
got.
All right, Matt Pizza, what you got?
Okay. I think surprises, just Hawthorne in general. I never expected a team like this to show up in EGL. Um, and then biggest letdown. Uh, Honestly, I think for me it's probably gonna be Big Dog Entourage, right? Like I thought week one roster, like I thought they were really good. I thought they had a solid roster, and I thought they would be like one of the top teams. But with all the roster changes going on, and like it's just, to me, it was just the biggest letdown. So hopefully they can, you know, prove me wrong and make it my biggest happiness. But it is what it is.
All right, and then for me, surprises. Obviously, Tex kind of took mine. Monkeys Rising. They've been off to a hot start. IBS team in a gold lead. The fact they're able to close out series against gold teams is so impressive. I think all of them have extremely high potential, very high bar, and I'm excited to see if they can reach that bar come time for playoffs. And then letdowns. Um, Obviously, we touched a little bit on Flip United. They've only won with their E Spheric, so I'm really going on there. And then BDE Gold being last place. I did have high expectations for this team. They change the roster every single week, which is not the best, but that's probably internal stuff, and you can't really, pin it on that. But yeah, I think my biggest letdown for sure is BDE Gold. But they did add Altazi, so maybe this is the turnaround. Maybe they finally win this week. We'll have to see for sure. Going on to our next topic, our last one before we end the stream: team/player matchups to watch in the future. So this could be anything. Um, I don't know if you guys have anything written down. I have stuff written down. Um, if you want me to go first, I can go first. Unless you guys want to go first, because I don't
Uh,
want to steal your points. Because
I'll
I
go
do that a
first.
lot.
I'll
Okay,
uh
Matt
I'll
Pizza.
bring I'll
Let's hear
bring
it.
up what I mentioned earlier on in the podcast. The Hyperion Origin versus Hawkthorn Esports matchup. Week
Yep.
7 casted, right? Like that that is gonna be the like it's just gonna be the best matchup. And it's a good way to end off EGL, right? Like it's gonna be week 7. I expect both of those teams to be practically relatively undefeated. Um, they might drop a few games to other teams, but I think overall they'll be coming in with the same scoreline. And whoever wins this matchup will just have the mental edge going into playoffs. So I mean, I'll let someone else take it from here. I don't want to like hog this topic
Sure.
all to myself, but
So I have two. Uh, I won't go into too much detail about it. First one that I think they're both actually next week matches. Let's see. Let me double check. Yeah, actually they're both next week matches. So Hyperion, a little bit selfish. Hyperion versus Rev. It is the top lane matchup for that game between the Rune Mage and Vixper. Both really potent top laners, both in the solo lane and team fight space. So I'm really excited to see that. And then my the one I'm really excited to see, and I know it's weird, is Wonder World on Flippa versus Chinese Spy from Monkeys Rising. I think these are
Okay.
two players that have gotten some spotlight, but not a lot, and this is an opportunity for them to kind of set themselves kind of apart from the rest of the center, of, like kind of rest of the pack in competition. I'm really excited to see what happens there.
All right, and then mine, obviously Hawkthorn Hyperion. We already touched on that, so I'm not going to touch on it. That was my team matchup, week 7, streamed, and then I said Dracana versus Kurt or Chitin. I think that's going to be very hype matchup in the mid lane. I don't think Dracana has really gone against one of these top tier mids yet. I believe. So I want to see how that's going to go. What is Dracana going to pull out? Pocket picks. Brand has to come into discussion because this guy's played a lot of brand mid. It seems to be his forte. Um,
Dude,
it's
you're a
it's
brand
something
man
that's not,
guy.
but
Like you're there for it.
this guy, yeah, this guy, he's been playing a lot of brand mid, and I think it's we've also seen some Vagar support actually, I believe, and that was pretty cool. So obviously, I like the cool pocket picks, the things that come out very situational, but you see them once in a blue moon. Um, I want to see if Dracano will pull out Brand again. I think his Brand is fantastic. We saw it on stream. Dude was like 1v9ing with the Brand. Definitely has to be respected. That's going to be my player matchup. Any closing statements you guys got before we end it off here? Anything you want to say?
Matt Pizza, go for it.
I mean, obviously, thank you so much for having me be your very first guest. Even if you know, we had to talk about Orin a little bit too much for my taste in this
We barely
podcast.
talked about it, man. You really don't like Orn.
No, yeah. But yeah, I think there are like you said, Tex. There are a lot of interesting narratives that are being written here, especially with BDE and Monkeys Rising. And it'll be really interesting to see how all the teams shape up or ship out as the season continues.
I'm
Tex, you got anything?
yeah. Thank you guys for having me. Thank you guys for listening and joining in and having this wonderful conversation. This goes to Clutch and Matt Pizza, to to Elemental League as a whole, and to all the viewers out there. Thank you guys for sticking around, and see you guys around.
All right. Well, this is going to be it coming through from the EGL podcast. We did go a little bit over time. It wasn't supposed to be this long. It was week 1, though, or episode 1. So a lot of talk about. Wanted to get everything in there. Thank you guys all for watching the Elemental Gold League podcast. We'll be here next week, same time. Different guests. It'll be me and Tex, but we'll have Kuda on the show, which is Hyperion Origin's
Ooh.
coach, I believe.
Oh
So
yeah.
we'll get some insight onto Hyperion Origin and their run. That will be very fun. Can't wait to have him on the show. I think it'll be a great time asking him some specific Hyperion Origin questions, not leaking too much, but get a couple questions in there. sure. But then again, thank you guys for watching. We're actually going to send a raid over BOL because you know what? Why not? Spread the love a little bit around. I know it's only 10 people, but get the raid in there. But thank you guys all for watching. I believe this Friday we have. Do we know what the stream match is? Does anyone know? Because I don't.
Pulling it
I
up right
believe
now. Oh wait,
for
never mind.
EDL,
You got it, Matt?
For EDL.
I'm pulling it up. For EDL, it is, if this would load. Oh, it's on Solari. My bad. It is. It should be Abyssal Emerald versus Crosspoint Koalamos.
Oh, it'll be a good match. New Abyssal Emerald roster will be. See.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for watching. We're going to send the raid over to BOL. We will see you guys Friday. Make sure to tune into the pre-show and the streamed match. Thank you guys all thank you guys all for watching, and we will see you guys later.